Level 1. The Recruit. Ippan. You were introduced through a man who knew a man. That's how it always starts. Nobody walks into a Yakuza office off the street. You were watched first. For weeks, maybe months, someone noticed something about you. The way you handled a situation, the way you didn't talk when talking would have been easier, the way you moved through the world like someone who understood that most rules were made for other people. Now you're in a small office above a pachinko parlor in Osaka. The room smells like cigarettes and green tea. A man in his 50s sits across from you. He's not large. He's not threatening in any obvious way. But the air around him is different, compressed, like the atmosphere just before a storm. He doesn't offer his name. He doesn't need to. He asks you one question. Are you prepared to sever all ties with your previous life? You say yes, you mean it. You don't fully understand what you're agreeing to yet, but you mean it. You become Ippan, the lowest rank, general member. You have no real title, no real authority, no real anything. You run errands. You clean offices. You drive men who don't acknowledge your existence to meetings you're not allowed to attend. You make $800 a month and you live in a shared apartment with 2 other Ippan who are just as invisible as you are. The first rule you learn is silence. Not just about the organization, about everything. Your opinions, your feelings, your past. None of it exists anymore. You are a blank surface onto which the organization will write whatever it needs. The second rule is presence. You show up. Every time. Early. Without being asked. Without complaint. You do this for 8 months before anyone above you learns your name. That day, the day someone above you says your name, feels like the first real breath you've taken since you walked into that office. Level 2. The Apprentice, Wakashu. You have a mentor now. He's called Senpai. Not his name, his role. He is your direct superior, your teacher, your judge. Everything you do reflects on him. If you embarrass yourself, you embarrass him. If you succeed, he takes credit. That's the structure, and you accept it completely, because the alternative is returning to a life that no longer exists. Senpai is 34. He has tattoos that stop just below his collar and just above his wrists. Invisible in a suit, visible when it matters. He teaches you things that aren't written anywhere. How to bow at the correct angle to each rank. How to pour sake without being asked. How to stand in a room full of powerful men and take up exactly the right amount of space. Enough to be useful, not enough to be noticed. You begin collecting small debts, local businesses, nothing significant. But it's real work now. Work with weight behind it. You visit a restaurant owner who is 3 weeks late. You don't threaten. You sit across from him and drink the tea he nervously offers and explain very quietly that the organization values its relationships and hopes this one can continue productively. He pays within the hour. You feel something when you walk out. Not pride exactly. Something colder than pride. The recognition that you have become someone who moves differently through the world than you did a year ago. At night you study. Yakuza hierarchy, history, protocol. You learn that the organization you've joined traces its roots to the Edo period. Gamblers and street merchants who formed their own codes when society excluded them. You learn the philosophy of Ninkyo Dantai, chivalrous organization. The idea that the Yakuza exist to protect the weak, to maintain order where the state cannot. You're not naive enough to believe all of it, but you understand why it exists. Every system needs a story about itself. Level 3. The Soldier, Kyodai Brother. That's what Kyodai means. And for the first time since joining, that's what you feel. You've been formally inducted. A ceremony with sake cups and ritual words that bound you to your boss the way a son is bound to a father. Oyabun Kobun, parent and child. The relationship is feudal, ancient and completely real. You have your own wakashu now, a 19-year-old from Kobe who looks at you the way you looked at senpai 18 months ago. Hungry and careful. You teach him silence first. It's always silence first. Your territory is a 6-block stretch in Namba. Hostess bars, restaurants, a massage parlor, 2 convenience stores that operate legitimate fronts for other things. You manage collections, resolve disputes, maintain relationships. You clear $4,000 a month now. You have an apartment alone, a car that isn't registered in your name. The yubitsume happens to a man in your crew in your 7th month as kyodai. He skimmed, not much, but enough. The ritual is formalized. He wraps his own left pinky, severs it at the first joint with a tanto blade, presents it to the oyabun wrapped in white cloth as an apology, an offering of flesh in place of honor. You watch the whole thing without expression. That night alone you sit for a long time with a glass of whiskey and think about the distance between the person you were 3 years ago and the person sitting in this chair. The distance is so large it has no meaningful measurement. You don't feel guilt. That surprises you less than it used to. Level 4. The Lieutenant, Shatei Gashira. You manage men now, 12 of them across 2 territories. The job has changed completely. You're no longer the one making visits, making collections, making the implicit threats that keep the machinery running. You're the one receiving reports, analyzing, deciding. The transition from operator to manager is the most disorienting shift you've experienced in this life, and you've experienced several. You attend meetings above a sushi restaurant in Shinsaibashi every Tuesday. 8 men at a lacquered table, green tea, no phones. The discussions are about territory, revenue, problems, solutions. The language is careful and indirect. Nobody says what they mean explicitly. You learn to hear what's underneath the words. Your oyabun, your direct boss, is a man named Tanaka, 61 years old. He has the stillness of someone who has not needed to raise his voice in 20 years. When he looks at you across the table, you feel assessed in a way that goes beyond your performance. He's looking at your character, what you're made of underneath the discipline and the suit. You clear $15,000 a month. Most of it moves through a construction subcontracting company. You've hired an accountant who doesn't ask questions, which means he asks exactly the right questions and then professionally forgets the answers. Your family, what's left of them, has stopped asking about your work. Your mother thinks you're in real estate. You let her think that. It's cleaner for everyone. Level 5. The underboss. Wakagashira, second in command. The organization has 200 members across 3 cities. You are responsible for daily operations, the thing that actually keeps it functioning while the oyabun maintains relationships, handles politics, represents the organization in the wider world. You wake at 6 a.m. every morning. By 7 a.m. you've already read 3 reports. By 9 a.m., you've resolved 2 disputes that would have escalated without intervention. By noon, you've met with 2 legitimate business partners who understand exactly what kind of organization they're partnering with and have made their peace with it. By evening, you're in a private dining room with men from a rival organization, negotiating a boundary adjustment that will prevent something neither side wants. Violence is a failure of management. That's something you believe completely now. Every act of violence represents a breakdown somewhere in the system. A relationship that wasn't maintained, a boundary that wasn't clearly communicated, a problem that wasn't solved early enough. Your job is to prevent failures before they become visible. You clear $60,000 a month. You own property under 3 corporate structures. You have a son who is 8 years old and attends a private school where none of the other parents know what his father does. You coach his football team on Saturday mornings. You are, in that context, completely normal. A quiet, attentive father who never misses a game. The distance between Saturday morning football and Tuesday night negotiations has stopped feeling strange. That's what concerns you when you let yourself think about it. Level 6. The counselor, psychokomon. You don't run operations anymore. Your role is advisory, strategic. You sit beside the oyabun and you think. You analyze the landscape. Political, financial, organizational. You identify threats before they materialize. You identify opportunities before others see them. You are the intelligence apparatus of a $200 million criminal organization. The legitimate business interests now outweigh the criminal ones, at least on paper. Real estate development, entertainment, security consulting, construction. The organization has evolved over the decades you've been part of it into something that exists in a legal gray zone so sophisticated that it takes a team of lawyers just to understand where the lines are drawn. The Japanese government has been pressuring Yakuza organizations since the 2011 anti-gang laws. Several of your members can no longer open bank accounts, rent apartments, sign contracts. The state is trying to make it impossible to exist in normal society while remaining in the organization. Your job is to find new ways to exist. You're good at it. You're 61 years old. Your tattoos are faded slightly at the edges after 4 decades. You still sit perfectly straight in every meeting. You still bow at exactly the correct angle to each rank. Some things you don't unlearn. Level 7. The boss, Kumicho. There are perhaps 58,000 Yakuza members remaining in Japan, down from 180,000 in 1963. The organization has been shrinking for decades. Pressure from law enforcement, changing economics, a younger generation less interested in the old codes. You inherited a smaller organization than your predecessor did. You will likely pass on a smaller one still. This doesn't keep you up at night. What keeps you up at night is the question of what the organization becomes when it can no longer be what it was. You are Kumicho, the supreme boss. Your name is spoken carefully in rooms you're not in. Politicians who would publicly deny knowing you have your private number. Police commanders who enforce the law against your organization have, through intermediaries, reached quiet understandings with you about what enforcement looks like in practice. You live simply, a traditional house in Kyoto, a garden you tend yourself on Sunday mornings, security that is invisible because visible security is a provocation, and you stopped needing to provoke anyone 30 years ago. Your word ends disputes. Your silence ends careers. Your approval makes men. Your disapproval unmakes them. You feel none of the power that others feel when they're near you. What you feel is responsibility. Constant, heavy, inescapable responsibility. For 58,000 people whose lives are structured around an organization you now embody. For their families. For the debts and loyalties and obligations that stretch back decades and will outlast you. The loneliness is absolute. You chose it. You would choose it again. Level 8. The Shadow, Kaicho. You stepped down from Kumicho 3 years ago. Not because you were forced, because you understood something that most men in your position never understand in time. The organization is bigger than the person who leads it, and the best thing you can do for it is remove yourself from its visible center before the state uses you as a target. You are Kaicho now, honorary chairman, a title that means nothing officially and everything actually. The new Kumicho makes decisions, but he calls you first, always, not because you demand it. You never demand anything anymore. Because he understands that 50 years of accumulated knowledge doesn't retire when the man does. You are 78 years old. You take walks in the morning through the Arashiyama bamboo grove. You drink 1 cup of green tea. You read. You think. You occasionally meet with a man who drives 3 hours to sit across from you for 40 minutes and then drives 3 hours back. Whatever was discussed in those 40 minutes will shape decisions that affect thousands of people across 3 cities. Your tattoos are almost blue now with age. The dragons and waves that once covered your back have softened at the edges, the lines blurring slightly into your skin like something being slowly absorbed. You are becoming part of what you built. The cost of this life, the family moments you missed, the versions of yourself you abandoned, the things you saw and did and authorized and can never unknow. You calculated that cost a long time ago. You decided it was acceptable. Most days you still believe that. On the other days you sit in the bamboo grove a little longer than usual and let the sound of the wind through the stalks fill up the silence. Then you go home. The machinery continues without you needing to touch it. It always does. Somewhere in Osaka tonight, a young man is sitting in a small office above a pachinko parlor. The room smells like cigarettes and green tea. A man across the table is asking him one question. The young man says yes. He thinks he understands what he's agreeing to. He doesn't, but he will. They always do.